Have you ever wondered how some people make eating healthy, exercise, and managing stress look so easy? You can too. Welcome to Wellness Wisdom, where we uncover the secrets to lasting health and happiness and empower you to make wise health choices, see results, and create a healthy lifestyle for good. Join Camille Kennard, licensed social worker, certified health and wellness coach, a self-care specialist on the journey to explore how to make health and well-being possible for you. It's a health and wellness journey you can take together. Please welcome your host, Camille Kennard.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Wellness Wisdom. It's June. I love June. It's like one of my favorite months just because the sun is out, and we don't need a jacket to go outside, and it's just beautiful. And I love soaking in the energy of the earth. And I know for those of you who followed me, we've talked a lot about being out in the forest and how being in nature can heal your body. And can help you be more present in the moment. So you guys, in June, we're going to talk a lot about that, about mindfulness, getting ready for the Mindfulness in the Mountains retreat coming up in September. You guys are going to love it. So I'm super excited. And I'm really excited to have my guest that I have today. We've been trying to connect for a few weeks now. Elena Sonnino. Elena, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Camille, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled and honored.
Yes.
Super excited for this conversation.
Yes, I am too. It's so fun having my podcast because I've just connected to so many amazing people across the country. And Elena actually lives in Virginia, so we're ways away from each other, but we have some friends in common through our networking and all of that.
That's so fun.
And I feel like we're sisters in what we believe in, this mindfulness and just being present in the moment. So you guys are going to love the podcast today and what you're going to learn about, really living your best life and feeling more joy and being present in the daily tasks of your life. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Elena. She's a life coach, speaker, and a yoga teacher. What most people say about Elena is that she brings delightful sparks of energy to everything she does. So I can totally see that. Her work with individuals and groups is an invitation to unearth, attune to, and embody inner strength and wisdom. Or as Elena calls it, the sunrise in your pocket. Ooh, I'm so excited. That's what the name of your podcast is, right?
It is.
Yeah. She inspires individuals and groups to remove self-imposed obstacles so they can live fully as their truest self in the now. And you can learn more about her at elenasonnino.com and also her podcast, which is called Sunrise in Your Pocket. And we'll probably talk a little bit more of that and give you that information as we go along. But Elena, I'm so happy to have you. Like I say, this is something I feel very passionate about. It's really grounding ourselves, being mindful. And sometimes that's a lot of words that people are like, what exactly is that? What does that mean? And I would love for you to share with us kind of how you came to doing what you're doing. How did you get interested in like mindfulness work and helping people be present in their lives? Where did you come from?
Yeah, it's such a good question because I think everywhere and nowhere would be the short answer.
I love that.
Right. I think to a certain degree, this is probably what I've always done. I've always been that person who created and held space for people to just be with themselves. And feel comfortable with themselves. And yet I didn't really know what that was called. And I certainly didn't attribute it to mindfulness. And I would say that I was not the least mindful person of anyone I knew, but I think when I was younger and even into my early 20s and probably early 30s, I don't know that I was mindful. I was that person that spent a lot of time thinking about the future and the past and was always, and I know you're a student of Tara Brach, right? But that like trance of doing, that constantly striving and being perpetually unsatisfied. I would set goals like running a marathon and yet be in tears because I missed the time. So I was never really enjoying the moment. It was always about this perception of what it should be or what my goals should be. And a lot of that, some of that came rather from some of my history. I had cancer in my early 20s. In fact, it June 12th is my 21st birthday from my bone marrow transplant.
Oh, wow.
And
congratulations.
thank you. And that was, I didn't know it at the time, but the pivotal moment that I think taught me many years later why it was so important to be mindful. Because at that time, I was in survival mode. All I wanted to do was survive, right? And as you do, and that's not a bad coping mechanism. I was that silver lining girl, surprise, surprise, always looking for, the bright side of things. And yet that didn't make me very mindful. I didn't feel things. I didn't really allow myself to experience what was happening in that moment. So years later, fast forward, I had been a classroom teacher for 12 years, and I was just kind of exploring my life. I was starting to find a practice on my yoga mat. I was starting to realize that perhaps there was more to this thing. And I went through some pivots in my career, from teaching to blogging and doing some freelance writing, and then to life coaching. And in that time, what I realized was there's got to be more to something than surviving. Right. There has to be. One of my favorite quotes is by Diane Ackerman. And she writes, I always get it mixed up, but it's my favorite quote, so you wouldn't think I would. She says, I don't want to get to the end of my life and realize that I've lived the width of it. I want to have lived the depth of it.
I love that.
Yeah. And so I think at some point it was actually running. Because running for me was this thing that was always about a goal and striving. And I realized that I wasn't enjoying it anymore. It was my 5th marathon when I was in Washington, D.C., which is where I was running that marathon, is beautiful in late October. Why am I not enjoying this instead of constantly just watching my watch and thinking about the finish line? And I'm a slow marathoner, so 5.5 hours, you got a lot of time to enjoy the course and the people and the signs. And as I started realizing and putting kind of all of these puzzle pieces together, that I had been this person who coped. I had been this person who knew how to get from point A to point B no matter what. And yet I had missed everything in between. So that's what really made me take a hard look at what would it be like to allow myself to feel more, to be present, to notice and explore, and maybe even not be so judgmental all the time. So those were, I think, some of the big things that got me to this place of really wanting to be grounded, to have roots that I can allow to expand, into the earth and into the moment. And yeah, we're human. We have hopes and dreams, and we also have a past. So it's not a dismissiveness of those things, because I think that's what makes us whole. But it creates an and instead of a but. And that for me was where it all came together.
That's powerful, because I think for a lot of people, we set these limitations on what is possible for us. Or we, like you say, we're so fixated on a goal. I love your story about running and how it was like, okay, I've got to make this goal. But, it can be beautiful in those moments. And those are actually the times that I feel like, and I think you agree with me, that that's when we're living our best, is when we're in the moments and we're experiencing the euphoria of life, right? The well-being. I love that. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about, how do you feel like, your ability to be present, mindfulness, what did that do with going through cancer? I mean, I didn't know that that's something that you had experienced. How did that influence your cancer journey?
That is when I was least mindful. So it experienced it in that as I look back at it now, let me backtrack. When I was going through cancer, it was only about survival mode. I was not present at all. In fact, so my bone marrow transplant was autologous, meaning that the cells were my own.
Okay.
I remember very, very little of that 18-month period in my life. And yet big things happened. I had just gotten engaged. my engagement then fell apart because we were 23 and young, and suddenly there was this huge life thing happening. I wrote in my journal twice in those 18 months.
Oh, wow.
Which is really telling because you can't see, but behind the computer screen, there are like 6 journals stacked.
Yeah.
Right? But I didn't let myself feel, because feeling would have meant being afraid, would have meant being angry, maybe, all of those pieces. And so I just decided I was going to be hopeful. I was going to survive. Like, what choice was there? So what it taught me, though, was that I can feel and I can move forward, right? That I can allow myself to be really present, to allow the sensations and to see them as benevolent messengers. So I now also teach yoga, and my favorite practice to teach is yin yoga, which is when you stay in shapes for longer periods of time, right? Anywhere from 90 seconds to 5 or 7 minutes. And it's all about getting into the connective tissue and moving through the fight or flight response to be able to stay. And that, to me, is what mindfulness is about, right? Really unearthing what any given moment has to offer and exploring it and noticing it, and then having the information you need to discern and to make choices that come from a really informed place rather than the habits of thinking about past or future. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, because I think, it's a struggle of our society right now, right? We have our cell phones and technology and all the distractions. And I love how you talked about, especially going through a cancer diagnosis. I think there's a lot of people that can relate to that, or anything that's a fear for us, starting a business, anything that's like this big, huge thing that we're not sure how we're going to get through it. I love that you said, I was afraid of my emotions. And then when we know that we can embrace our emotions and fight with the cancer, it's not that it's one or the other. That's really powerful. I think that's so powerful, because I think it's easy for us to say, well, I'm going to just ignore that I'm having this fear or this anger or this shame about my situation, instead of like, nope, this is happening. I'm noticing it. This is what's going on inside of me, and moving forward with that. I think that's really, really, really cool. So can you tell me a little bit more about that, like what you do to help be present in the moment for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting thing, because if I'm not present, right, if I'm ignoring things, it's not like those things go away.
Yeah.
They just come back. There. Yeah. So I have a few practices kind of for myself. My mornings are all about starting in a really grounded place. And for me, that looks like journaling. I years ago read The Artist Way by Julia Cameron.
Oh yeah.
It's about morning pages. So my structure probably isn't as formal as that, but it's about 3 pages in my journal. Just kind of, I like to think of it as my brain dump to get things out. And that's the first piece. And then I can sit and breathe. To me, my breath is my anchor into those roots, into being grounded. Because if I can breathe, I can allow myself to notice sensations. And then I talk to myself a lot.
Yeah.
So if there are sensations in my body or feelings, I'll try to notice it. I think it's really easy to label, right? A tight hip or a this, and we're like, oh, and we label it as good or bad. But instead, and I'm human, so do I do this in every moment? No.
Yeah.
But I try to catch myself, but really asking, okay, so what is here for me to know, right? What do I need to know? The other thing that I do is when I go outside, before I go for a walk with the dog, for instance, I'll stop and I'll pause and I'll take a few breaths, because the open air just feels so good, and it's this connection. And I like to kind of ask the question of just, what do I need to know right now? And I always find an answer. It's not, sometimes it's really surprising, and sometimes it shows up in the shape of a tree. Sometimes it shows up in the shape of or in the sound of a song, whatever it might be, or sometimes just this little nudge, this inner voice. that tells me. And those are some of the ways that I stay rooted. My yoga practice roots me into the present. It is the single best teacher, rather, of acceptance, which I think goes hand in hand with mindfulness and being grounded. Because on any given day, my right side of my bodies will be different than my left side of my body. And it'll be, one shape will look different from Monday to Tuesday, or Monday morning to Monday evening. And so that practice has given me ample opportunities to be really grounded in myself, and to connect with parts of myself that I don't know that I had been willing to explore in the past.
I love that. That's really powerful. As we sit and get to know ourselves, I know for a lot of my clients and for myself, journaling and getting it out there has really been helpful. It's been therapeutic. Being outside, breathing the air, the fresh air in, all of that kind of stuff can really help us be present. How did you know that when you were struggling, how did you know you weren't present? What was going on inside of you? What was the
there was a constant spinning and doubt, and also two things: a reliance, just a complete focus on thinking about the future, the what ifs, the one days, and that's how I knew I wasn't at all in the present. And the other thing I also realized is that when I'm not rooted and grounded, I'm a catastrophizer. I'm the person who, the text will come. So I'm divorced from my daughter's dad. And and things are very amicable. We've worked really hard and have an amazing situation, but still to this day, I'll get a text. And if I'm not grounded in me, I'll think, oh, what happened now? What did I do now? Right. It's not based in any reality, certainly not a present moment reality. It's all based on, that's the past. But so those are some of the things that I realized I was spending a lot of mental capacity in that future, in those what ifs, in that storytelling, and realized that that's not real.
Yeah.
My mind is I'm a powerful storyteller, but a lot of the stories we tell ourselves don't help us. And so realizing that I could take some of that narrative back if I allowed myself to be more present and connected.
And that's a really great insight. I think at my last retreat, we were talking about the beliefs we have about our body, like I'm too fat or my body's not good enough, or, some of those beliefs that we've and I say whatever you feed grows. So if you feed these negative beliefs about yourself, and I love that you said just knowing what wasn't working, like with the constant spinning. A lot of my clients, we talk about that the amygdala, that fight or flight, wants to tell us the worst thing is going to happen, right? And so we live our lives in fear that, oh no, we're going to be embarrassed or rejected or treated badly or whatever. And I love that you said, well, grounding myself helps me be in reality, what's really, really going on. And actually, I think it helps with feeling safe, right? Feeling like things are okay and feeling content.
Absolutely. One of the stories that I know I have brought forward over the years was, this won't last. Because, when I was sick, when I was first diagnosed, I had gotten engaged 6 days prior, right? My life was really fabulous, all of these things. And that pattern has has been repeated over time. And so that became a story that I hardwired into my brain. And that's one of the stories that the minute I realize I'm telling a variation on that story, I pause, I breathe, I notice what's really happening. So I think part of it is when we give ourselves permission to explore, we start noticing the patterns. And I like to think, I often talk when I lead workshops or retreats to groups about, I feel like we walk around with butterfly nets, one behind us and one in front of us. That way we catch the thoughts and the stories as we move. Whether we're projecting them out or they're coming from behind, whichever way they're coming at us. Because I don't think it's not about having those. We're still going to have triggers or moments in our life when something comes up, but it's about catching myself sooner than I might have. And that's the work that I love to do with people, to give them their own tools to realize, hey, this isn't, reality. This is total fiction, or this is a story of suffering. We suffer as humans. I mean, there is suffering. I studied with Martha Beck when I did my life coach training, and she talked about clean pain and dirty pain. Right? Clean pain is you stub your toe, it hurts.
Yeah.
Your body tells you it hurts. The dirty pain is the story that you tell that because you stubbed your toe and it hurts, you're not going to be able to wear the favorite pair of shoes that night, or that tomorrow you won't be able to do whatever it was that you wanted to do. And so it's the stories we create around those moments that I think we can learn to catch. That to me is one of the gifts of mindfulness, apart from just being in the moment and letting it be delightful and intense and all of those things. We also learn to observe our patterns and to perhaps choose new ones.
I love that. It's so powerful, that we have these maybe habits of thought that we go to. And the cool thing, with the neuroplasticity of the brain and mindfulness is that we can change that, we can shift the road we're going down. And I want people to know that, we all do this, and the more you learn about mindfulness, the more you can catch those times when you're telling a story and you can bring yourself into that present moment with your breath or whatever it is. And I love that. And I loved when I was looking at your website and you were talking a lot about how, you work with women in midlife. And I want you to talk to us a little bit about that, but really that you help people get in tune with what's already inside of them, right? It's already there. It's just helping them see it and open it up. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of my biggest beliefs in life, that we have this inner sense of knowing and strength that is always there for us. And yet we don't trust it. We don't choose to notice it, right? We're moving all really fast all the time. We're looking for answers in books, in teachers, and in all of those things. And yet if we would stop and slow down and get out of our head and out of our own way, that there is this wellspring of wisdom that comes from inside. I know that to be true because I know that even in my hardest moments, my body has given me everything I needed, right? And maybe my examples are extreme, but my stem cells and my transplant were my own, right? Yeah. So my body gave me what I needed. I wasn't supposed to be able to have my daughter because of all of the treatments. And yet my daughter came naturally from me. The strength to endure during a marathon, I didn't get that from somebody else. I may have learned some breathing strategies, some different things. And yet the thing that kept me going was me. And that's why I call the podcast Sunrise in Your Pocket, because to me, it's that thing. Sunrise, we all believe in, even if we don't see it, even on a cloudy day, we know that the sun is rising. Yeah? So we don't question that. So that's this inner knowing and strength piece of what if we could believe in that, like we believe in the sunrise or the moon or, whatever it is, and have certainty that wellspring exists for us. So yes, that is the thing that I think lights me up the most, to help women in particular see that they have this renewable resource, right? It's always there for them and it's growing with them and always has their best interest at heart within them.
That's amazing, because there really is so many voices that are telling us what to do and what not to do, right? You can turn on your television or your radio or whatever. And for a lot of us, I was just thinking about, as you were talking, the times I've had insecurity about what should I do? What decision should I make? Maybe I should ask a family member or a friend and they'll tell me what to do, right? but knowing that within yourself, and I've always believed this, I mean, as a clinical social worker, that we know the answer inside of us. It's just having someone there to kind of help you open that up, what the answer is. But we really have the wisdom inside of us, and we can trust that. We can trust that. And I think that's really a powerful message that you're sharing.
Thank you. And it's, can we be wrong sometimes? Or,
yeah.
Wrong in parentheses, right? Because I don't know that there is wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong is feedback. There's a quote Coel Simpson wrote once or said that there isn't failure, there's only feedback, right? That if we see all of those choices as opportunities to learn, then we start to know that no matter what decision we make, it's going to give us information. But yes, filtering through and discerning. That's why in a lot of the work that I do with my clients, one of the pieces to helping them trust that inner strength is also helping them learn what are their core values, right? What are their guiding principles for life? Because I feel like the more we can be rooted in what you believe in and the parts that make you, then it's easier to start to trust and to trust those voices, and also filter out the voices that are only making noise, right? They're like the white noise kind of, hey, are you sure?
Yeah.
they're the little testers. So the more we can root into ourselves and that core of us, then I think the easier it becomes to filter, not to say it's easy, but it can be easier to filter out all of the other information.
Yeah, I love that. Maybe before we take our little break, you can just tell us a little bit about what made you decide to work specifically with women in that midlife stage of life. What kind of got you thinking about that?
There's, I think, this sense, especially in women, that we put our dreams and our lives on hold for everybody else. Maybe we have the jobs that we want or we thought we wanted, and we're doing some of the things, and yet there's this doing for others. Women in their midlife are really good at that, and they feel really guilty about creating time for themselves. And it sounds super cliche, but the whole when you're in the airplane, whose oxygen tank do you put on first? Helping women realize that they don't have to wait until they're on vacation or the kids are out of school or they've retired to live the way that they want to live. They can do that now. And that, I think, in part because of some of my medical past and the work that I've done, I taught elementary school students and seeing their moms, but this idea of, as kids are especially getting older and women are starting to realize maybe there's more than just this great job or this house, full of kids. Those things all make me happy and are fulfilling. And yet there's this deeper sense of purpose that I know is there and haven't quite tapped into.
It's a time of life when we kind of are reflecting on what we want, right? What we're about and who we are. And maybe sometimes we've gotten a little bit not connected with ourselves because of doing so much for others, that our desires and our values and everything has kind of been put to the side. I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
And I think in particular, women in their midlife right now, right? We grew up with our moms being of generations that were just starting, they were still all about doing for others. And so we have this interesting kind of background, even societally, of, well, do you go out on your own, right? How much do you really put yourself out there? And how much of yourself do you really show? And whether it's, body image, all of the stories that we've kind of brought with us that are still there, and we're trying to be good role models, and yet we're not really showing up for ourselves. We give great advice, or these women I'm one of these women, give great advice and are fabulous resources for others, and yet don't treat themselves very kindly often. And so there's this, I think, real need for connection, in particular to ourselves and to others. So that's the other I think, variable that really drew me into women in their midlife, because I think women in their midlife want to be connected. They want to feel like they belong and are a part of a community. And it can be very isolating, and it can be hard even with friends, and then social media. We start to live kind of in stealth mode behind our computers. And so it can be an important time to remember that it's okay to want to be connected and to meet others and ask for help.
I love that. We're going to take just a quick break. And when we come back, I would love for you to talk a little bit more about maybe some women you've worked with and, helping people show compassion for themselves. I mean, that's a big part of my work, is rather than beating yourself up for eating the cookie that you thought you wanted to not eat, is like just showing that kindness and compassion for ourselves. And maybe showing up, like you say, and being vulnerable and real in the world that we're in.
Have you ever had one of those days when you feel like you can't keep doing it all? When you feel like the demands of work, family, and life are just too much? Are you trying to make others happy, but you are miserable? Do you feel like your brain is constantly in a fog? Do you worry all the time and can't shut your brain off? Do you wish you had more time for yourself? Do you want to find more stillness and quiet your mind? Many women feel overwhelmed and stressed with the demands of family, work, and other responsibilities. It can literally push them over the edge. What if you could have a weekend away to dedicate to you, to your well-being and self-care, to eat healthy food, practice invigorating yoga, get calming massages, and spend time in quiet meditation with nature? Join Flourish Wellness for our Mindfulness in the Mountains wellness retreat in the beautiful mountains of Eden, Utah. Learn to quiet the mind and to listen to your body and fill your soul with self-love and acceptance. Register now, space is limited. To check out the cabin and accommodations and to register, go to flourishwellnessconsulting.com under live events or email Camille at flourishwellnessconsulting.com. This fall, make yourself a priority and learn to make peace with your body and like who you are for good.
Welcome back, everybody, to Wellness Wisdom. We're having a great conversation. I'm with Elena Sonnino, and she lives in Virginia, and we connected, and she's just awesome. We're talking a lot about mindfulness and grounding ourselves and being present in the moment and how important that is for people, especially women in midlife who maybe have been doing a lot of things for others. And she just shared with us her passion for that we each know inside of ourselves what is best for us. And if we can connect to that part of us through being present, through grounding, we can live a more authentic life. And I asked Elena before the break if you would share with us a little bit more about maybe women that you've helped and what you've seen shift for them, maybe a little bit about their stories. I would love to hear a little bit more about what you do to help them really be more joyful and love their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always so amazed by the women that I work with, and I worked with a few gentlemen as well, but to watch women show up for themselves with vulnerability and to know that they don't have to have it figured out, and that maybe the answer, it is right within them, but that they've just kind of been circling around it, and it doesn't always have to be as complicated as they'd like to make it.
Yeah.
Having people have those realizations and getting to be a witness to that makes my heart just light up. So what comes to mind is there's two women in particular that I've worked with. One is someone who has multiple children. She has big dreams for herself professionally and personally. And what she realized is that she wants to be unapologetically herself. Mm. She grew up kind of being told that having a personality and being her wasn't good enough. And so she's hidden, and, she's got a sense of humor. She uses some foul language occasionally, right? She's sarcastic and just also so vibrant, and realizing that she didn't have to hide that person, that she could be that whole person and show that. More and more as she's doing that in networking situations or with clients or with her family, they're responding really positively. And so that's been fabulous. But my favorite story about her is that when we started working together, she really wanted to develop more of a meditation practice. And yet she felt like she wasn't, in air quotes, a meditator, right? Mm-hmm. She doesn't, the idea of just sitting and watching her breath, she loves to have guided experiences, but on her own, it didn't feel quite right. So we talked about, well, what are some of the habits that she already has in place and the things that she loves, for instance, to start her day. And she is a coffee lover. She loves her morning coffee. But her morning coffee usually came when she was making breakfast or getting kids out the door or doing 6 different work things. So we talked about what would it be like to make her morning practice an exploration of really savoring that cup of coffee. Camille, the transformation has been, she now actually wants to create a sitting practice because she's like, this is so incredible to really feel the warmth of the cup in my hands and feel each sip. And her family now knows she actually gets up earlier in the morning so that she can enjoy this. Whereas in the past, she would have said, I can't get up any earlier. I'm already getting up. And it's not a lot. It's only a few minutes. But knowing that it's not the quantity of time or what it looks like compared to somebody else's practice, but that she could create something that was nourishing and nurturing to her and enjoy it so much. That was a really beautiful thing to witness.
I love that. I'm actually seeing her sitting just with her coffee and feeling how warm it is and just smelling it. And, that whole, I love tea, just sitting there with my tea, the same thing, right? Like how warm it is, what the feeling is, what the smell is, and not doing something else while you're doing it. You're just there present with that. I love that. That's a great story, especially for a mom of a bunch of kids who's probably going every which way, right?
Yeah.
How those moments change us.
Right. And the reality is that, a mindfulness practice doesn't have to look any one way.
Yeah.
And, that for me, for her, it's maybe sitting with her coffee. Maybe somebody else, it is sitting on a cushion or going for a walk or dancing or running, whatever it might be. But realizing that as long as we go in with intention, to me at least, as long as we go in with intention and knowing why we're doing something, and having that intention of using that as a moment to connect with this deeper sense of self, because that's when she's asking herself just kind of some of these questions and she's just letting itself all percolate, really, that can be a really beautiful moment, and that is enough. That's not settling, that's not taking away from anybody else's practice, but that for you in that given moment is what you need, and giving yourself that's a gift in my book.
Yeah. And it doesn't need to look one certain way. I think sometimes when I start with people with meditation or mindfulness, they think, oh, this means sitting on my zafu with my, in this pose or something. But really, like you say, it could be anything that you're doing and really being intentional and practicing and noticing what it feels like in that moment. I love that. Anyone else? You said there was maybe another one that kind of came to your mind.
There was another story, another woman that I've worked with she came to me, her life was a bit in transition. She wasn't working in the job that she had been working in that she really loved for a long time, and has a young daughter, and was kind of in this moment and realized that what she really loves is to be steady. And we've talked a lot about what that means and what that looks like, and this idea of steadiness. And over the course of time, she has begun to realize that steady doesn't necessarily mean that everything is going to be even keeled. And one of my favorite moments with her was realizing that, so she's somebody that loves to travel, and she used the metaphor of a plane. And that, she notices, because I asked her to consider, what does this feel like when things are unsteady? And her first comment was, well, like when you're on the plane and there's that jolt of turbulence and your stomach, ends up in your throat, that's what it felt like to be unsteady. And then she paused, and I just kind of waited because I wasn't exactly sure where she was going with it. She said, but wait, planes are made to withstand turbulence. I went, yes. It was just, I couldn't plan anything better than that. And I went, So say more about that. And she realized that, planes are made to withstand turbulence. And so is she, right? That steady doesn't have to mean that everything is going to be, even keeled on every given day or perfectly balanced, but that she is made to withstand these ups and downs. And that is where the steadiness, this thread of steadiness is the foundation of her moving through those moments. And so, yeah, she can feel the intensity of those bumps in the road. And yet when she comes back to herself, so she began to use some mantras and, this kind of repetition. And I'm a big fan of Post-its. So whenever I ask my client to go, because we're human, how are you going to? So there are Post-its. I have this vision of all of my clients with like Post-its on their bathroom window.
Sticky note everywhere.
So that's a story that I loved witnessing, and I love to tell, because I think when we can tap into those, sometimes it is through metaphor, because it's easier to see things outside of ourselves and then realize, oh wait, that does apply to me, that can be a really powerful access point.
Oh, I love that. It's such a beautiful, I'm just picturing it as she's talking about, the plane and the turbulence. And that's such a great imagery of what life is like, right? There's turbulent times, and mindfulness, how it can make the turbulence, I guess, change our experience with the turbulence, right? I love that. That's really powerful. Awesome. We're going to take another little break. And when we come back, I want you to give us, so people that are kind of new, I know mindfulness is a lot of what I talk about, so people kind of understand a little bit of what I mean when I say mindfulness, but maybe a couple of practices that you would give to people that they can start with even this week to just try out some different mindfulness, activities that can help them feel better.
Do you feel stressed, overweight, and unhappy? Are you tired of setting goals that you don't accomplish? Do you want more energy, motivation, and focus to create your dreams? Many people struggle to keep up the commitment, motivation, and confidence to be successful, to reach their goals and aspirations. They often let other things get in the way of their personal health and happiness. It doesn't have to be this way. You can change. Join us for a 6-week online health transformation workshop. Learn about the mind-body connection, overcome obstacles to health, create daily health rituals, get support from others like you, and change your life for good. Register now at flourishwellnessconsulting.com under online group workshops, or email Camille at flourishwellnessconsulting.com. Our gift to you as a podcast listener is $50 off the transformation workshop. Use the promo code podcast50 when you register. This new year, make peace with your body and like who you are for good.
Welcome back, everybody, to Wellness Wisdom. I love this conversation. I'm talking to Elena Sonnino, and she is a life coach, yoga teacher. She's an amazing woman who really lives what she talks about, which is being present and listening to your inner knowing, being present in your experience and living your life with intention, right? With knowing why you're doing what you're doing. And before the break, I asked Elena if you would kind of share with us just a couple of practices that maybe people can try out if they're kind of new to grounding themselves, or if they're maybe having issues with that what if brain that says, what if this happens, what if that happens, kind of that anxiety monkey mind we have going on. What are some practices that you would kind of give them to start with?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm a fan of breath work. And when I say breath work, people are like, oh, is that something fancy and it's going to take a long time? No. I like to say that 3 breaths is really all it takes. And you can take 3 breaths just about anywhere. You can even close your eyes in a line at the grocery store and take 3 breaths, right? But to me, it's when you can really, I like to think of the inhale as an invitation to the present moment. So each inhale is an experience of the present, and each exhale is an experience to allow that breath to move through you. So when I'm leading a yoga class, I'll say, receive the inhale and whatever sensations are there, and then experience the exhale. Allow it to move through you. So if that's something that's new to you, taking 3 breaths. 3 breaths is lovely. 6 is just pure decadence. So if you can manage 6, That's a really beautiful place to start. And just really receiving each inhale as a reminder that it is a new moment, because it is. Each new inhale is a new moment. And then each exhale, just an experience and letting it move through you. So that's one. The other two practices are some of my favorites and things that I do every day. So a brain dump, getting things out of your mind onto paper, because we have so many thoughts in our brain that one of the ways that I think we can root into ourselves is just to create some space. And while we thinking about things, we'll get them off of our mind, it won't. They're going to stay there. But I find that when we transfer the thoughts and the feelings or whatever is showing up onto paper, it gives it somewhere to live. That way we don't have to worry we're going to forget about it. I find that sometimes people are reluctant to perceive that they are giving up, that they are going to forget about these fears because they've lived with them for so long, or these distractions, right? Because it can kind of be comforting to know for some people. And that's easier to than feeling the present moment. And so knowing that they are there for you in a journal, that if you need them, you can go back to them. That would be a nice practice. And it doesn't have to take a long time. And I've had people say, well, what am I supposed to write about? And I love this story. I heard a speaker who was talking at an event once, and she was working with a coach, and her coach really wanted her to start journaling, and she was really resistant to it. And so her beginning journal entries were, I don't really want to do this. I'm going to totally prove my coach wrong that this isn't helpful. Well, now she's sitting here talking to large groups of women about the power of journaling, because it does, I think, when you give yourself a place to let your thoughts live, and that it doesn't have to be inside your brain, can be powerful. So a brain dump would be my second tip. The third tip would simply be to ask yourself, what's here for me? So you can start with a breath and feeling maybe your feet on the earth. I like to put my left hand over my heart and then my right hand on top of that, taking a breath there and just feeling my body for a moment, and then asking, what is here for me? What do I need to know in this moment? It's a nice way just to come back and to disrupt the spinning. And I lied, I have a fourth.
Oh, okay, awesome.
The fourth is because I find decluttering can be a really nice way to get unstuck. And we hear about decluttering all the time, but it's not about a quantity of time. If I'm feeling particularly stuck, or, the smallest things, if I notice I'm scrolling a lot on Facebook or Instagram, right? And because we're on Facebook for work, and yet somehow the scroll starts.
Going and going, yes.
Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll literally stand up. I will spin around my office, like do a little, 5-year-old style twirl. And wherever my eyes land, I will spend the length of a song. So I'll turn on a song on Spotify, decluttering that space. It might just mean moving things around and looking, hey, do these books actually belong in this space? Or is there a piece of paper that needs to go somewhere else? Can I right? It doesn't have to be this big formal thing, but it's enough that it shifts my mindset and brings me back to, hey, what's here for me right now? What's important instead of this other stuff? So those would be my 4.
I love it. I'm glad we got an extra one. That's powerful. It made me think about the 5 Tibetan rites. You know how you do the spinning in the beginning of that one? Just that whirling dervish or whatever it's called.
Yes.
I love that. So everybody, you deserve to give yourself the breath and receive the nurturing that breath gives you. That's the one thing I thought of as you were saying, inhaling and you're receiving the breath. I love that. It's the idea of we've given so much, let's receive, and getting things out on paper, and grounding yourself to the earth, feeling the earth. You maybe even putting your hand on your heart. You guys can't see us, but putting your hand on your heart and just saying, what do I need right now? Or what's here for me now? And then the last one is that spinning, decluttering. I love that. And putting a song on that kind of shifts things for you. I love that. That's so powerful. Thank you so much for being a guest today. This is a great, and I know that this is going to be powerful for people to learn how to really live their best life. I feel like this is like the foundation of all well-being, is really being present to these moments that are so amazing in our lives, that we sometimes get distracted from. So thank you so much for being here. And if people want to kind of learn more about what you're doing, what's the best way for them to reach you?
They can go check out the Sunrise in Your Pocket podcast. They can get there from my website, which is elenasonnino.com and then you can /podcast. It'll be right there. And also join me over at the Live Your Sunrise Facebook group. It's a great little place where we play with the topics from the podcast each week, lots of daily doses of inspiration. And I would love to connect with them there and learn more about whatever they're working on or hear about celebrations or questions that they have to any of these.
I'm going to have to join that. And I'm hoping that I can listen to your podcast because it sounds really powerful. Everybody, as you're going through this June and you're noticing the beautiful, I love that idea of the sunrise. The sunrise is always there. And the sunrise is so beautiful. But when we notice it, when we're like, if I get up early enough that I go out and I see the sunrise, really noticing these good moments in your life is so powerful. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And everyone, I hope you have a great day. And as we continue to make peace with our bodies and like who we are, we'll be more mindful and present in the moment. Thanks, everybody. Take care.